Hello everybody, I am Abeer Buainain, AGU Women Technical Committee Member, Arab Women Technical Committee Member, General Secretary for Qatar Gymnastics Federation, PE teacher in the school. Dear AGU family, welcome to our fourth AGU online educational seminar for our Asian judges. As everybody knows, Women Technical Committee with the full support of AGU already started to provide a set of seminar or webinar to all judges to keep them contacted, active, refreshed, and updated with the latest rules. We believe that this kind of seminars are very important in this hard period of the pandemic, and especially after many cancellation or response of many events. We already have 3 sessions in the last week about 11 bars, balance beam, and floor exercise. And we thank you very much for your positive feedback. It is valuable for us. Today, we are going to start our 4th session with the vaulting table. You will have the presentation and practical video with the analysis files for D jury and then for E jury 5 for each. We are going to give you evaluation period 3 seconds for each D and E evaluation so you can feel the competition atmosphere. Now, let me introduce you to our expert for today, Ms. Rima Kizilgun. Hi, Rima. How are you?
Hello, dear Abeer. Thank you very much. How are you?
Fine, thank you. She is our AGU Women Technical President, former gymnast, former national team coach, international coach, and physical educator. Welcome, dear Rima. We are very happy to have you with us. And now I leave the floor to you.
Thank you very much, dear Abeer, for your introduction. Thank you. And let's start with our vault session for today. As my colleague Abeer announced, we had in our previous sessions in the last weeks our different apparatus. We had the uneven bars, balance beam, and floor exercise. Today we are going to try to cover many topics and important points about the vaulting table. And let me share my screen with you. Here we go. And as everybody knows, the vaulting table, it's the apparatus of dynamics. The first things jump on our minds is the dynamics, is the powerful performance, is the force explosive. Although I would like to tell you honestly that vaulting table, it's not easy as most of the judges or the people think. It's quite, while it seems easy, it's difficult for performance by the gymnast or also for evaluation because it's only a few seconds and you have to consider and memorize many deductions or many criteria before you release your score as a judge. So I tried just to make a very short view about our vaults and how it had developed during years and decades, from the vaulting box to the vaulting horse, and lately in our current time as a vaulting table, which is more important, this development and this renewing the shape of the vault for the safety of the gymnast, first of all. Now, if we talk about the D panel and the functions and duties of the D panels, we have to remember very well the specific apparatus deduction related or made by the D panel as the running approach more than 25 meters in the run distance. So we have to deduct 0.505 from the final score. Also, run approach without performing vault, which means empty run. Of course, in case no touch to the springboard or to the apparatus, In this case, the gymnast will receive deduction of 1 point by the D panel from the final score. Later on, she can repeat. And also, if there is support or in the repulsion phase with only one hand, there will be deduction of 2 points by the D panel from the final score. Also, if you remember, you know, in the apparatus final qualification, for the apparatus final or in the apparatus final, the gymnast is required to perform 2 volts from different volt group and show a different second flight phase. So in case she has not different groups, volt from not different groups, or doesn't show a different second flight phase, in this case, be careful, the D jury will deduct 2 points from the second volt, okay, before she continue to have the average of the 2 volt and reach to the final score. This is very important, okay? And also, if there is one of the 2 volts receives 0, then we will have the final score of the performed volt divided by 2, as usual. This is very important as D jury to know how to deduct and when. When we talk about the requirements also, and we already talked about the performance with support with one hand only, or in case of 0 volts, which is invalid volts, and we will see later in which cases, as indicated in the rules. In these 2 cases, the D jury with the apparatus final will have automatically video review, of course, by also consulting and letting the technical committee president or the superior jury president know about the case, and they will have the video review. What's the invalid volts or volts which receives 0 points? It's like the support without support phase, which means neither hands are on the table. In this case, 0 point. But if one hand only, as we said before, then it's deduction 2 points from that volt. And another case, failure to use properly the safety collar mat for the Yurchenko round of entry volts. Also, failure to land on feet first. I have it here in bold because mostly we can face this kind of situations. So we have to be very careful to pay attention to the first contact of the gymnast. Also, first volt, if it's repeated for the second volt, it means it's 0, as I said before. So we just take the score of the first volt and we divide it by 2 to reach the final score. But in this case, the repeated volt will receive 0. Also performing without green light, which means if the gymnast starts while the red light is lit, also 0. The intended volt cannot be recognized, which means if the gymnast execute the volts very poorly to the level that you cannot recognize the volt, then it's 0. And also if the gymnast perform prohibited volts like straddled volt, like prohibited pre-element before the springboard, or if she, as you see in the last sentence, push the table with both feet. Also, if there is any spotting assistance with, during any phase of the vault, it's again 0. So this is very important, the invalid volts which receive 0. I made the reminder to you. The first contact should be on the feet. Let's see some examples. But no worries. Take second to the first contact. Unfortunately, as you could see here, the first contact was not on the feet, but on the knees and any other body parts. Let's see the other example. again, unfortunately, you could see the first contact, which was not the feet. And let's see the third example. Yeah, in this case here, the DV is okay because first contact were on the feet. So I hope you could see the difference. And if we move to the recognition of the vaults, we have some guidelines and techniques for the recognition. This is very important for the D panel while evaluating the vaults. We will move one by one, step by step, and we will compare the similar vaults together to differentiate between the two vaults. For example, first of all, we can talk about the salto backwards stretched without longitudinal axis turn. So LA, it means longitudinal axis turns, which mean the twists or the turns around the longitudinal axis. And we talk about the salto backward piked without longitudinal axis turn. So which one stretch, which one pike without turn, okay? Simply, the definition of the salto stretched is the salto is in inverted position, which means head down, must be stretched, as you can see later in the picture. And also after the snap, with deduction of course, and the snap's deduction, you remember, it's either 0.1 or 0.3 made by the E jury, but now we talk about D jury. So after a snap with deduction, rotation is stretched position, in stretch position must be shown. So if she used snap, she has to show again straight position. And criteria number 3, the majority of the salto must be maintained in the stretched position. So most of the salto must be in stretched position. 3 criteria, okay? Let's see some example for the stretched salto here in the video. Okay. So as you could see here, the body was straight while on vertical and no issue. So this is stretched without snap, quite straight. Let's see another example. I guess. As you could see here, she had the stretched salto, but with a snap here, as you can see the flexion of the hip, but later on she opened it again while in inverted position. Okay, so we consider it salto stretched, but with a snap. And as I said, the E jury must apply the deduction accordingly, whether 0.1 or 0.3. Let's see another example. Salto. This time the stretched salto with hollow. So as you remember, it can be quite straight or with a snap, but opening again, or with a little hollow on the upper back. 3 are accepted. Fine. Okay. Now we talked about stretched salto and we tried to define how it should be. Now, if we talk about the pike salto, without turn, of course, both case, let's see the example first. So, as you could see here, the salto was piked because the gymnast stopped rotation in the stretched position. She started snap, but then she stopped the rotation with a straight position. So we consider it pike. And let's see the other example. In this case, unfortunately, there was no open at all to the hip angle. So we consider it pike salto because hips was not open. I hope it's clear the difference now. If we move to talk about another 2 similar topics on the vault, let's talk about the Tsukuhara vaults, which is group 3, and the handspring salto forward with turn, which is group 2. So if we talk first about the Tsukuhara, simply the gymnast must show a side repulsion. So if the gymnast doesn't show repulse sidewards, the reference are the shoulder, of course, then we have to consider it another vault, okay? Here in this case, and in the picture as you can see, the gymnast repulse sideward. So we can consider this Tsukuhara. Oops, let's see the example in the video. Okay, this is with a twist, but we talk mostly for the entry and the side repulsion. Now, let's see Tsukuhara with turns versus handspring salto forward with turns. See the example. So in here, we have the gymnast, see the shoulders here. She had not the repulsion sideward. She didn't repulse sideward. You can see she's more entering forward, even here after the repulsion phase. So in this case, this does not repulse sideward, so we consider it forward entry, okay? And the gymnast intended to perform, as you can see here, the Tsukuhara back salto stretch with full twist, but we consider it another vault, which is from group 2, the salto, the handspring salto forward stretch with half turn, okay? So side repulsion, it's Tsukuhara, and front entry or no shoulder and side repulsion, then it's another vault. Again, we can see examples here for the recognition of the vault. First example, I think it will be the same gymnast. So he intended to do the Tsukuhara full twist, but actually we consider it as group 2, which is salto forward, stretched with full with half turn. And in the second example here, same gymnast, I guess, she will have another vault. Handspring salto forward, tuck with full turn, which is again from group 2. In this case, unfortunately, if the gymnast is competing in the qualification to the apparatus final or apparatus final, she will receive in the second vault here penalty, neutral penalty made by the D panel from the second vault score, 2-point deduction, okay, for the performing the same vault from the same group, because it must be from different group and different second flight phase. Let's see here the comparison. As you can see in the first square, first picture here, the gymnast here, she has the sideward repulsion, so it's more like Tsukuhara, third group. Here, the second gymnast, she has not side repulsion, as you can see, and we consider it more like front entry, as you can see more clear in the fourth and the sixth picture. For the first gymnast here, she had sideward repulsion. Okay, so this is the difference, to be more clear. If we talk about another topics, again, we talk about the handspring salto forward, piked versus tuck. So we compared straight with pike before, and then we compared the Tsukuhara with the salto forward half turn. Now let's compare and realize the difference between pike and tuck saltos. To recognize the pike salto, if the gymnast in inverted position shows bent legs more than 135, which means she's more close to the 180 straight legs, then we consider it pike salto. It means she has maximum until 135 degree or more, which means more close to the 180. Okay, let's see an example. So as you could see here, she had a little slightly bent legs, but it's still in the range of 135, more than 135. So we consider it, as you can see here, salto piked. Another example. Coming. Okay. Again, we consider this salto pike, as you can see here, because the legs slightly bent, more than 135 degree, more close to 180, which means straight legs. Okay. Now, if we talk about the tuck salto here, if the gymnast in inverted position shows bent legs 135 degree and less, it means it will be a tucked salto. Let's see an example. Okay. As you could see here, she had more bent legs during the performance, 135 or more. This more means more close to 90 degree, more close to have the legs angle bent, as you can see here in the second slide. Then we consider it tucked salto. So you see here, if this is the 135, she has more than 135 and getting more and more close to the 90 degree. Okay, then we consider it tucked salto. And here is an example. Also, the more bent legs, as you can see here, almost close to the 90, the more it's tuck salto. Another comparison, salto forward stretched with half turn in the longitudinal axis, around the longitudinal axis turn, LA. So after repulsion, if the stretched position is maintained by the vertical, as you can see here in the picture, we consider it salto forward stretched with half turn. Okay. Let's see an example. Okay. And when we consider it piked with half turn, if there is a flexion of the hip joint by the vertical, then we consider it salto forward piked with half turn. As you can see here in the picture, she started to have flexion in the hip and she continued this way. So we consider it pike with half turn. So the hip angle in vertical position, it's the decisive, it's the critical point or the criteria to consider it pike salto with half turn. Let's see an example. Okay, as you could see, so there was a hip angle in the vertical position, and that's why we consider it salto forward piked with half turn. Another topics to talk about, another concerns, the handspring salto forward stretched now with full turn or more. One turn or more. Let's see what's the criteria. A snap following the repulsion and or if there is a flexion of the hip joint by the vertical, then we consider it stretched salto, but of course with execution deduction made by the E panel. So when it's only half, the flexion in the vertical position is a critical point, but when it's with full turn or more, then we still consider it stretched, but with execution deduction. So either snap, but she has to open again, or flexion in the hip. Let's see an example. Okay, as you could see here, she had the snap and then she reopened and she had a little bit hip angle, but since it's with full turn, we consider it salto forward stretch with full turn. Okay. In the second flight phase, if the execution of the longitudinal axis turn begins near the end of the salto, then we recognize it pike salto. Or if after the snap, the gymnast obviously grasps her legs, we recognize it pike salto. So we talked about the stretch with full twist. Now we talk about the pike with full twist. So these two points is very important in the consideration of the pike salto. Okay. Let's see an example about the grasping legs and the turn begins too late. Yeah, as you could see here, the gymnast started the turn late, and also there was a grasp of hands to the legs. In this case, we consider it salto pike with full turn. Another example. Oops. Yes, it's more obvious, salto forward pike with full twist. Now, if we talk about the recognition of elements with the twists, with turns around the longitudinal axis turn, the elements with twists must be completed exactly. Otherwise, another element from the code of point will be recognized. This is the case when it's with the saltos forward or backward with turns. For example, let's see the first example. Sometimes gymnast takes time until it comes. Okay, here if you could realize in the first contact on the mat, the half turn was not completed. That's why we consider it only handspring salto forward tuck. Let's see the other example. Here is the gymnast tried to do Yurchenko with a 3 twist, but unfortunately, as you saw in the first contact, also the twist was not completed, so we consider it only Yurchenko 2.5 twist. And last example. Unfortunately. So here the gymnast, she intended to perform handspring full twist from group 1, but the twists were not complete, and that's why we give only handspring and half turn. That's it for the recognition. I hope it was clear. It's not easy, as I said, the vault, as many people think. You have to always differentiate between the similar vaults, and you have to remember and apply carefully the criteria, the rules to differentiate and to give recognition, proper recognition to the performed vault. Now, as we used to do in the previous sessions, let's prepare your papers and pens, and if you are ready, we can move to the evaluation of the vaults as D jury or D panel, and we can start with the first vault. Sometimes the vault comes a bit late. It depends on the videos we choose. Sometimes she can start a bit earlier. So just be careful and wait the gymnast until she approach and reach to the springboard. First vault, if you are ready, I'm going to start the vault performance. Watch carefully. Okay, that was the first vault, and as we used to do, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to evaluate as D jury. Okay, last few seconds. And time's up. Let's see what vault we had. Oh. So it was Khorkina vault, named by the gymnast Khorkina from Russia, which is from group 5, number 513, and which is round off, flick flack with half turn off on the table, and then followed by salto forward tuck, 1.5 twist, and the D score is 5.4. Okay, let's move to the second vault. Here we go. Coming. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you now the period for your evaluation as usual. And last few seconds. And time was over. Let's see what vault we had. Yurchenko pikes. Remember, if there is no open at all in the hip angle, then we consider it pike. And it's vault from group 4. So the number is 420 and the D score is 3.5. We move to the third D evaluation, third vault. Okay, since she came quickly, I'm gonna give you one more show to the video. Okay, and another 30 seconds for you. Last few seconds. And time's up. As you can see here, now we have Tsukuhara stretched, which is from group 3, and the vault number is 330, and the D score is 420. So here the body stretched was maintained in all the salto and no hip angle. We move to the fourth vault as okay. Another 30 seconds for you. And time's up. Let's see the vault. It was handspring, salto forward, pike. Remember the knee angle criteria. So if it's 135, more than 135 degree, which means more close to 180, we consider it pike, even there is slightly bent legs. Remember the rules to apply. So it's a vault from group 2, number 220, and the D score is 420. Let's move to the last vault, to evaluate as D jury. Here we go. Okay. That was the last vault, and I'm gonna give you your period of 30 seconds. Last 10 seconds. And time's up. Let's see what we have. And we got here a vault from the 5th group, which is round off flick flack with half turn on, and then half turn and salto backward pike, like the Cuervo technique from group 5. So the vault number is 521 and dot 2 to show that it's the second vault, because in the box we have sometimes 2 vault under the same number, and the D score is 4.8. So that's it for the for the D jury evaluation, recognitions, and everything related to D panel. Now let's move to talk about the E panel, all the execution deduction. We talk now about the E panel, and we talk first, as it's obvious, about the first flight phase, because we all know that the vault has 3 or 4 different phases: first flight phase, repulsion phase, second flight phase, and the landing phase. So when we talk about the first flight phase, we can talk about the pure technique, which is hip angle, and the deduction either 0.1 or 0.3. Let's see an example. As you could see in the video, she had hip angle with deduction of 0.1. And if we talk about the arch, also the arch will receive deductions 0.1 or 0.3 up to the arched position. Let's see an example. Okay. Deduction of 0.1 for the arch. And let's see the other video. Here the gymnast has more arch in the back, so she receives 0.3. When we talk about the bent knees and leg separation in the first flight phase, try to see the pictures carefully, and you can see here the leg separation. And remember, it's either 0.1 or 0.3 if more than shoulder width. Okay, and also the bent legs, which is here not so much. Usually, if the legs are bent more, and it's you can deduct for the bent legs either 0.1 or 0.3 or maximum 0.5. Okay. Now, if we talk about the repulsion phase, we will talk about the bent arms. And remember, also, this is very important for the repulsion phase. The bent arms can receive deductions 0.1, 0.3, or 0.5. Okay, let's see the first example. Okay, slightly bent, so 0.1. Let's see the other example. No voice, no problem. Okay, as you could see here in this example, more bent arms, so she receives deduction of 0.3. Now remember, please, when the gymnast bent the first arm, while performing Tsukuhara entry vaults, there is no deduction if the first arm is bent because it's related to the technique and to the biomechanic of the vault. Let's see an example. Because she needed to push and continue the repulsion properly. And in the repulsion phase, else than the bent arm, we have also shoulder angle. So let's see the first example. With slightly shoulder angle shown, we deduct 0.1 and remember the maximum deduction 0.3. So let's see another example.
Competitors in competition here, only 50 years old. Buainain from
Here, as you could see, she had more angle in the shoulder, so we deduct 0.3. Okay. When we move, we are still in the repulsion phase, and when we move to the deduction for prescribed longitudinal axis turn began too early. It means while the gymnast is still on the table, again, the maximum deduction is 0.3, so either 0.1 or 0.3. Let's see the example for 0.1. As you could see, the gymnast had early turning on the table, as you can see here also on the picture. So she received deduction 0.1. Okay. And let's see another example for deduction 0.3. Okay. See here, as in the picture, she's even more early to turn while on the table, and that's why she receives deduction of 0.3 with this vault from group 5. Now, since the first flight phase and the repulsion phase is very related to each other and very tiny time space in between, let's evaluate both phases together. So how many deductions in total for the first flight phase and for the repulsion phase? Let's see the video first and deduct for both first flight phase and repulsion phase. Okay, quickly coming, the gymnast, I'll show you one more time. Okay, few seconds to evaluate, and I'm gonna show you what deduction we have. Remember to apply for the first flight phase and for the repulsion phase deduction that we talked about. Arched, hip angle or shoulder angle, bent arms, and all other things. So let's see what we have here. As you can see in the picture, you can guess now more clearly what deduction she has. And we got here 0.1 for the arch, 0.1 for the bent legs, 0.1 for leg separation, even though it's not so clear here in the picture, and 0.1 for bent arms, not so deep. And we got here 0.3 for shoulder angle. Okay, the maximum deduction for shoulder angle. Now, when we talk about the second flight phase, we have to consider many deductions and criteria. Let's see what we have first. We talk about the snaps, and the snap, it has the maximum deduction of 0.3. So either 0.1 or 0.3, it depends on the snap angle. For example, in the first picture here, she got the slightly piked body position, and we call it snap, and she can receive deduction 0.1. And in the second picture here, as you can see, it's quite more clear, hip angle, 90 degree, or if it's less, which means more than 90, then it's 0.3. Let's see an example for the excessive snap. Yes, as you could see here, she got 0.1 for the snap. And another example. I guess it's also another 0.1. Okay, let's talk about the height in the second flight phase, which has the maximum deduction of 0.5. So as you can see here, it's either 1 or 3 or 5. And let's watch carefully the criteria for the height. So you can see here the gymnast hip level, and she has to raise her body mass up or center up almost same or even more than the hip height. So the more high she is, there is no deduction. The shorter or lower she is in her raising up period after the repulsion phase, the more deduction she receives. The more low, the more deductions. Let's see first this example for no deduction for this height. One more time with the diagram. So as you can see here, the gymnast is quite higher than the hip level or the trunk. And as I said, the more high she is, the best and better for the height. That's why she received no deduction. Let's see another example with deduction 0.1. One more time with the level 6. So as you could see here, the level here get a bit down. So she received deduction 0.1. And let's see another example for 0.3 deduction for the height. So see here, she's getting even more down, lower to the hip level of the gymnast. And as I said in the beginning, the lower she get down, the more deduction. And that's why she received here 0.3. Let's see last example about 0.5, the maximum deduction for the height in the second flight phase. Sometimes takes time, as I said, depend on the video cut. Okay, one more time with the sticks of the hip level. Coming again. So as you could see here, in the level sticks, this area get narrow and more low down. So that's why she receives 0.5. I hope it's clear for the criteria for the height and how to define which deduction it is. Let's talk about another deduction in the second flight phase, which is the distance, which has maximum 0.3, so either 0.1 or 0.3, and deviation from the straight direction only 0.1. And remember, the deviation from the straight direction, it's not part of the landing deduction. It's part of the second flight phase. Let's see an example. Okay, gymnast landed near to the vaulting table and she receives 0.3 for the distance. Another example. Okay. More far from the vaulting table, so only deduction for distance 0.1, but she receives another deduction 0.1 for the direction, deviation from the straight direction, okay? Now let's talk about the dynamics and what's the definition of the dynamics. Let's watch the video first.
That table, wow.
Okay, very active. So let's see the definition of the dynamics. It's to be active, powerful or forceful, energetic, and explosive change in the intensity of performance, or how I call it, force explosive. So this is the dynamics, and this is also one of the main and important topics in the vaulting table. And sometimes judges forget to apply this deduction. So pay attention, please. Let's see examples for the dynamics deductions. First example. Okay. She receives 0.1 for the dynamics. And second example. So the more monotone, no bumping, no force explosion, then the more lack of dynamics. And here the gymnast, she receives 0.3 as deduction for lack of dynamics. Yes. Let's move to talk about another deduction in the second flight phase, which is the under rotation. And remember again, please, that the under rotation is not part of the landing deductions. It's still part of the second flight phase and the performed salto. So for under rotation, we have maximum deduction is 0.3. So it's either 0.1 if there is under rotation without a fall, or 0.3 if there is performance with a fall. Let's have first example. So as you could see here, the gymnast had to step backward a little bit for lack of completed rotation. So we deduct 0.1 for under rotation, and it's only 1 because there is no fall. Let's see the second example. Okay. Here, unfortunately, you could see the gymnast, she had under rotation, not completed salto, and that's why she had to bow forward and even with a fall. So we give the deduction of 0.3 under rotation with a fall. And I left the body positions until the end. It's still, we talk about the second flight phase and deductions related to the body positions because it's related to each other or similar to each other. First of all, we talk about the exactness of tuck or pike positions without longitudinal axis turn, which mean alone saltos, plain saltos, either tuck or pike. You already know the criteria for the tuck and pike regarding the hip angle or the knees angle. Let's see the example first. Okay, tuck salto, but we deduct 0.1 for the exactness of the tuck position. Another example, exactness of tuck or pike positions without turn. Okay, as you could see here, it's more far from the exactness of the tuck or pike position, and that's why she receives 0.3. Now, don't forget, when we have pike or tuck salto, but with longitudinal axis turn, then the maximum deduction is only 0.1. Don't forget, okay? Let's see the example. So as you could see, even it's far a little bit from the ideal position of the tuck position, we still deduct only 0.1, okay? Now, if we talk about the body alignment in the stretched salto, as you can see in the picture here, when all the body points on one line, which is body alignment, so no lack of body alignment and no deduction. And in here, as you can see, there is not a straight line in the body different points, and that's why she receives 0.1 deduction, and this is the only deduction, maximum 0.1 for body alignment. So for the first picture, there is 0.1 deduction, as you could see, and for the second one, quite straight body, no deduction. And when we talk about the body position, we talk also about the stretched saltos. And if there is failure to maintain the stretched body position, which means piking too early, then we can deduct 0.1 or 0.3, so the maximum deduction 0.3. And also if there is insufficient and or late extension in the tucked or piked vaults, again, the maximum deduction 0.3, so either 1 or 3. Let's see some examples for failure to maintain the stretched body or position or piking too early. Okay, another example. In both cases, receives only 0.1 for failure to maintain the stretched body. Let's see another examples. Okay, here and in the second example. As you could see, she had more deduction for failure to maintain the stretched body, which is piking too early, and 0.3. Now, if we talk about the insufficient and or late extension in the tuck or pike vaults, we can see the first example. Okay, 0.1. And another example for late extension in tuck or pike position. Okay, she receives 0.3. All right. And after the body positions, we can talk about the bent legs and legs separation in the second flight phase. So as you can see in the different pictures here, the leg separation can be laterally or one front, one back, and also the bent legs, and maximum deduction for bent knees, it's 0.5, so it can be 0.1, 0.3, or 5, and legs or knee separation, maximum 0.3, so it can be 0.1 or 0.3. Now, don't forget, please, for deductions for the bent knees and or the leg or knee separation should be applied in each part of the vault, each phase. So for knees and leg separation, we have to deduct separately in the first flight phase and in the second flight phase. Don't forget. But when it comes to deduct for the feet not pointed, so in this case, you must apply from the section 8, which is the faults list of body faults and deductions. But you only deduct one for the entire vault. So for feet not pointed, you deduct only once in the whole vault. But for the knees and legs separation or knees bent, you have to deduct in each phase, 1 and 2. Now, if I have to summarize the E deduction for the second flight phase, we have to consider the snaps, which is maximum 3, the heights, which is maximum 5, the exactness of tuck or pike positions in salto with or without turn. And remember here, without turn, it's maximum 0.3, and with turn only 0.1 maximum, as we saw before in the presentation and the videos. Body alignment only 0.1 maximum. Failure to maintain stretched body, which means spiking too early, 0.1 or 0.3. Insufficient and or late extension in the tuck or piked vaults, which is maximum 0.3. Here for the legs, if we have the deduction for bent legs, maximum 0.5. For open legs or knees, maximum 0.3. And for the crossed, it's only 0.1 in the twisting vaults. Deviation from the straight direction, 0.1 or 0.3. Sorry. For the deviation, only 0.1. And for the distance, maximum 0.3. Under rotation, it's either 0.1 without fall or 0.3 with a fall. And dynamics deduction, again, maximum 0.3. And for feet not pointed, only 0.1. And for the whole vault, for the entire vault, don't forget. After this summarize of the deductions for second flight phase, let's have a practice to evaluate only the deduction for the second flight phase. Okay, so I'll ask, what is the total deduction for the second flight phase? And here we have the video first. Watch carefully, only second flight phase deduction. Okay. We can see here in the handspring, salto forward, half turn, the gymnast. Here I wrote, so only for second flight phase, she got the deduction of 1 point. Okay. Let's move to another example. Now it's element from group 3, Sokuhara stretched, and here we go. Okay, now let's see what we have in the second flight phase. As you can see, she had a snap here, 0.1. She was quite low, and 0.5 for the height. She had 0.1 for the body alignment. She had 0.3 failure to maintain stretched body, which spiking too early, and also 0.1 for bent knees, 0.1 for leg separations, 0.1 for under rotation as she stepped forward to finish her rotation, and 0.1 for the distance, 0.1 for the, no deduction for deviation, 0.3 for dynamics, as you could see, and 0.1 for feet not pointed. So total deduction for second flight phase only, it's 1.8. Okay, let's move to another or last example for total deduction in the second flight phase. Okay, a bit better performance. Let's see what we have here. No, let's watch it one more time, no problem. And here is the deduction for Yurchenko, salto backward stretch, double twist. So she got for the height 0.3, for the body alignment 0.1, for the failure to maintain stretched body 0.1, and 0.1 for bent legs or crossed feet, 0.1 for the dynamics, and 0.1 for feet not pointed. The total deduction in this vault for only the second flight phase is 0.8. Okay, that's it for the second flight phase. Now, if we move to talk about the landing deductions, which is also important in the finalization of the vault, we can see here that the execution deduction for landing must be taken according to section 8, which is the table of general faults and penalties. You have to be careful about the body position, as in here. So the hip angle should be higher, and if it's on the knee level, it's 0.1. If it's between knee level and down, it's 0.3. And of course, if it's deep squat, then it's 0.5. Same time for the level of the shoulder, when it's to the knee level or hip level, it's 0.1, and knee level 0.3. And also if any steps taken, for every extra small steps 0.1, or if it's large step 0.3. And also if she land directly with the legs apart, 0.1. Remember all the landing deduction, please. And if failure to maintain stretched body position, it's part of the second flight phase, not the landing. So please remember, failure to maintain stretched body or piking too early, it's part of the second flight phase and not the landing. And body posture, it's part of the landing, as I show you before in the previous slide. So body position while up and down or front for the shoulder or up, this is belonging to the landing. Now let's see example for the landing faults. Okay, we got here 0.3 for body posture. You could see how she was bending forward, and 0.1 for the step. No deduction for brush apparatus, remember, unless it's clear support on the mat with the hands. Then we consider it fall. Let's see the other example. Okay, in here we got 0.1 for body posture, 0.1 landing legs apart, and 0.3 for the big step. I hope it's clear. Let's move to the line judge. And what the line judge is responsible for, as you know, the line judge responsible for any deviation or stepping out of the landing zone, whether with one or both feet or hands or any body part. So counting the number of attempts, this is also the line judge duties. In the qualification and all around and team final, there is 2 run approaches are permitted. So the third one is not permitted. And in qualification for the apparatus final and in the apparatus final, there is 3 approaches are permitted. So the 4th is not permitted. So line judge, she will be in charge to calculate and deduct or take attention careful to the attempts number. In case of exceeding the touch warm-up also, the line judge, she has to inform D panel immediately. So they deduct 0.3 from the final score in case of exceeding the touch warm-up, which means she exceed the attempts number. Let's see an examples for the line. First example. Okay, in here the gymnast, she stepped out with 1 foot, so it's 0.1. Second example. Okay, be careful here. Still the gymnast inside, but she fell and she put the elbow, which is part of the body, out of the borderline. So the deduction is 0.3. Okay. And there is explanation for the body part, which means any body part can be arms, elbows, shoulder. And if we see the last example. Yes, in this case, be careful. The gymnast, she were close to the line, and even if she step on the line, but from inside inner, the line still part of the landing zone. So no deduction unless any part of the foot exceed the borderline. So in this last case, there is no deduction for the line. That's it for the E deductions. And if you are ready again with your papers and pen, let's move to the evaluation for 5 volts as E jury this time. So remember, please, all the deductions and try to apply all faults and deductions that you see. Okay. let's move to the first vault, and I'm gonna give you the vault number as usual, so you have to be prepared to receive what you see. Vault from the second group, handspring salto forward, half turn. Okay, time 30 seconds. Oops, sorry. Last few seconds. And time's up. Let's see what we got here. So we got here 0.1 for hip angle in the first flight phase. Second flight phase, we had 0.3 for height, 0.1 leg separation, 0.1 failure to maintain stretched body, 0.1 for insufficient distance, 0.1 for the dynamic, and 0.1 for the slight hop as landing deduction. So the total deduction is 0.9. Okay, let's move to another example. From group 4, Yurchenko, back straight, full twist. Okay, 30 seconds. And last few seconds. And time's up. Let's see what we have here. So the vault were from group 4, Yurchenko full twist, and we got here on the repulsion phase 0.3 for bent arms, 0.1 for shoulder angle, and in the second flight phase we got 0.3 for height, 0.1 for body alignment, 0.1 for bent knees, 0.1 for leg separation, 0.1 for feet not pointed, 0.3 for failure to maintain stretched body, which is spiking too early, and under rotation with a fall, remember it's 0.3, and 0.1 for the dynamics, 0.1 for deviation from the straight direction, and in the landing we got fall on mat to knees. So the total deduction is 2.9 as E deduction. Okay, let's move to another example, number 3, for evaluation, the vault as E, and the vault from group 2, handspring salto forward tuck with full twist. Okay, let me give you your evaluation period of 30 seconds. Last few seconds. And time's up. Let's see what we got here. We got 0.1 for leg separation in the first flight phase, and in the second flight phase, we got 0.3 for height, 0.1 for leg or knee separation, 0.1 for insufficient exactness of the tuck position, 0.1 for feet not pointed, 0.1 for insufficient extension of the tuck position, 0.1 for distance, 0.1 for dynamics, and 0.1 as landing deduction for the slight hop. So the total deduction is 1.1 for E deduction. Let's move to the fourth example. From group 4, Yurchenko, pike.
5 rotations here in Doha, and that happens before exercise. So you can take some of our athletes leave the gym and return. Core exercise score is 11.30 for Anna Sabatina.
On floor, representing Croatia, Anna Derek.
Okay, we consider it pike, as you remember, because there was no open for the hip angle. And let me give you a period of 30 seconds first, then we can talk about the vault. And last few seconds. And time's up. Let's see what we got here. So we consider it Yurchenko pike, and the deductions is for the first flight phase 0.1 for leg or knee separation. On the repulsion phase, we got 0.1 for bent arms. And for the second flight phase, we got 0.1 for bent knees, 0.3 for height, 0.3 for insufficient exactness of the pike position because it was quite open, because the gymnast intended to do the stretch, but it was pike. And also 0.1 for insufficient exactness, extension of the pike position, 0.3 for distance, 0.3 for dynamics, and 0.1 for slight hop. So the total deduction is 1.7 for E deduction. Let's move to the last example for today, number 5, as E evaluation. Again from group 4, Yurchenko, salto backward stretched with 1.5 twist. Seems to be successful vault. Let me give you your period first to evaluate as E jury, 30 seconds. Last few seconds. And time's up. Let's see what we got here. As you could see, it was Yurchenko back straight to 1.5 turn. And we got few deductions here in the second flight phase only. So we got 0.3 for the height, 0.1 for leg separation, 0.1 for lack of dynamics, and 0.1 for slight hop. So the total E deduction is 0.6. So when the vault is successful, we deduct less. When there is more multiple errors or faults, so the deduction increase, unfortunately, accordingly. That's it, dear friends, for the evaluations of the E panel as deduction and for the whole session of vault of today. I hope you enjoyed and could catch up with me to evaluate as D panel and as E panel. And as I said, please work hard because the vault is not as easy as many people think. We have to consider many things and many criteria in very short time limit. And I hope to meet you again soon in our next set of seminars and webinars for this year. And for now, I would like to make short reminder for our next session. It will be our last session for this set of seminars, the first set for AGU, and it will be a sessions dedicated only for the questions and answers. And we will have our expert, FIG expert, Ms. Donatella Sacchi, our Women Technical Committee President in the International Gymnastics Federation. And we will be very happy to have her with us, and she will try to reply to all your questions. So keep following us, and in case you couldn't catch the session of today, you can find it again recorded on our AGU educational YouTube channel. And please, you are welcome to send us any questions until next week for our last session, questions and answers. Until now, until that time, stay safe, stay active, and take care. See you later. Bye-bye.